So this is week 4 of our series, You'll Be Glad You Did, spoken by Mark Pomeroy.
We're taking dancing lessons.
Wow. What
nice.
kind of ballroom dancing
Yeah.
or twerking or what?
Well, our guy offered us that,
He did. Okay.
and we said if we have time at the end.
Yeah.
I know. I kind of want to have a surprise twerk. I'm getting married in 1 month.
Okay.
What advice can you give me?
Do a background check on.
My fiance is an attorney, though, so I think they might have already done a background check.
You always want to do your own. There's various levels and types of background checks. So you would have to do your research.
Sounds like you're telling me I should do a background check on the background check people.
If you see a website, there's all kind of colors, the font is large.
What's the ideal professional font size?
Courier, 12.
What's the right amount of number of kids to have?
Oh, wow. I mean, I have a dear friend who has 5 kids, and I only have 2 kids. So I think it just depends.
So 2
For me.
is the answer.
Yeah,
I don't know if you're watching
because you
this.
can each.
2. You're waiting on your wife? That's awesome. What is she doing? Shopping?
Yeah.
I'm getting married in a month. How do you get them to stop doing that? I don't know why you're laughing. Sometimes I'll go to like a baseball game.
Yeah.
The crowd will start to do the wave, and then it'll be like my turn to stand up, and I'm like, I really don't want to, but also I'm a people pleaser.
Oh, yeah.
So can I just stay seated?
No, the wave's different. You can never end the wave.
So I just have to do that.
You have to do the
There's
wave.
some things you have to.
Yeah.
What else do I have to do?
Pay taxes?
So I have to pay taxes, I have to do the wave.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
that's easy. I can remember that. I've learned a lot already from you, Marcus.
I feel like you know most of this, but
I do know most of this already. I got life pretty much nailed, but we're trying to shoot this, so I gotta pretend to be an idiot.
Well, hey there, Elevate friends and family. Great to have you with us today. I want to start off with a disturbing thought. It's okay, don't panic. It's okay to be disturbed once in a while, but here's the thought. The easiest person to deceive is the person in the mirror. So when it comes to deceiving myself, I'm the best at it. And when it comes to deceiving yourself, you're the best at it. And look, I know this, and I'm pretty sure you know this, because you've talked yourself into and sold yourself on some terrible ideas that you ultimately pulled the trigger on. In fact, a lot of the times you were the mastermind behind what is now your greatest regret. Because the fact is that for many of us, we've done more to undermine our own progress and success than anybody else on the planet. Now, I know there's always external voices, there's external pressures, there's temptations, there's influences and circumstances beyond our control. But at the end of the day, we still decided. Even reactions qualify as decisions. So have you noticed the person selling us on these terrible ideas, the salesperson in our head, have you noticed that their voice sounds a lot like ours? And sometimes the pitch that they make to us is completely irrational, defies logic, and we kind of even know it's a terrible idea. But so, for example, imagine the salesperson in your head was actually someone in real life. You walk into the department store and you're browsing the electronics section, and the salesperson comes up to you and says, listen, I actually know quite a bit about you. I know this thing that you're looking at. I know you can't afford it. I know you're already over your eyeballs in debt and you're struggling to make minimum repayments. But look, hey, just throw caution to the wind and buy it anyway. oh yeah, I know he's an incredible jerk and I know he's going to treat you poorly, but you're lonely and, even bad love is better than no love, right? Okay, so yeah, I know that the health professional told you to take better care of yourself because I was there. And then if you don't, there's going to be pretty significant consequences, but this tastes so delicious. And too often we fall for the sales pitch over and over. So look, here's just two simple questions. First of all, why do we do this? And second of all, is there anything we can do about it?
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
So today is the fourth and final week of our series, You'll Be Glad You Did, Timeless Advice for Troubled Times. So if you missed any of the first 3 weeks of this series, you can go back and watch them on this channel, or you can grab the podcast. Just search Elevate Church Perth on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Catch up, and you'll be glad you did. Now today, channeling my inner Jack Nicholson, I want to ask the question, can you handle the truth? Ultimately zeroing in on the importance of telling ourselves the truth about things like, why do you do what you do? Why you don't do what you ought to do? Why won't you stop? Why do you always go there? Why don't you finish that? And now look, when we ask these sorts of questions to other people, if they kind of lie to us, we call that an excuse. And because it's other people, we just nod, and oftentimes we know that they're lying and telling, making up an excuse, and we just nod and move along. But it's different when it comes to telling ourselves the truth. And here's what I want to underline right up front. When you decide to become ruthlessly honest with yourself, when you decide to let go of the excuses and start acting on the truth, in a very short period of time, you'll actually start to look in the rearview mirror and find yourself asking the question, who was that person? Like, I barely even recognize that person. And the person you'll be referring to in the rearview mirror is the very person you are right now. See, today's all about moving towards becoming the person God created you to be. Because here's a fun fact. We are all very capable liars. Yeah, I know it sounds harsh. Who wants to be called a liar? But look, we are, me included. And we didn't need to be taught this. I mean, have you ever had in your experience like a parent or a teacher or a boss, sit you down and say, hey, I need you to teach you some really important life skills. I'm going to teach you how to lie, deceive, excuse, and blame, okay? Because these are things that you got to learn. No, and the reason it's a hard no is because no one ever had to teach us this stuff. In fact, we started doing it at a very young age. We kind of were born, dare I say, natural-born liars. It's like it's in us, and we get good at it, and sometimes increasingly good at it, all by ourselves. Now, here's some fun facts about lying, just to break the mood a little. According to research, women and men generally and typically lie for different reasons. And this isn't going to be a shock to any of you. And a spoiler, women come out looking better. So the research indicates that the primary kind of lies women tell are to avoid hurting other people's feelings. It's like, so thoughtful. Also, not a shocker, men generally lie about themselves to impress other people. I caught a fish. Yeah, you know the one. Research also drills into the three main reasons why we lie to other people. The first one is to avoid pain, shame, rejection, embarrassment, loss, hurting somebody's feelings, to avoid work, to avoid being caught. Second reason is to protect our reputation, which is kind of bonkers because when you lie to protect your reputation, what you're actually doing is you're saying to the other person, what you think about me is more important than the reality of me, which we'll keep hitting on that today. But, we lie to protect relationships, opportunities, sometimes income. And then the third reason the research indicates that we lie is to win. To win admiration, to win respect, to win that promotion, to win a competition, which is also called cheating. And typically this list, lying to avoid, lying to protect, lying to win, is targeted at lies that we might be in the habit of telling other people. But this exact same list also applies to what motivates us to lie to ourselves. I'll come back to that in a moment. I'm going to lighten the mood again with this fun fact. According to research, the three things we lie to ourselves about the most are, okay, wherever you are, think about it. Any guesses? If you guessed any of these things, you're right. The three things we lie to ourselves about the most are how much we actually eat, how much alcohol we actually drink, and how much we actually exercise. All right, so back to the list of motivating factors of why we lie, which applies both to why we lie to other people and to why we lie to ourselves. It's the exact same list. We lie to ourselves to avoid. Primarily to avoid admitting we need to change. We lie to ourselves to protect ourselves about embarrassing truths about ourselves, like admitting like that is actually a thing. Ooh. To protect from shameful things in the past or things that are going on right now. Protect ourselves from just having to admit what a stupid decision we just made. And then to win, because look, let's face it, nobody wants to feel like and admit that you are a loser. All of this adds up to the bottom line that we lie to ourselves to feel better about ourselves because, who doesn't want to feel better about themselves, right? So it's kind of understandable. And in fact, it's a great destination to want to get to want to be able to wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and feel better about ourselves. The problem isn't the destination. The problem is if we choose the pathway of lying to ourselves to get there. Because lying to ourselves stops us from doing what's good for ourselves. It empowers us to avoid change and the sort of change that will actually make us a better version of ourselves. But the reality is sometimes it's easier to lie than to try. But by not trying and reverting to lying, you'll never, ever become the version of you that God's created you to become. And that's going to impact and restrict you, and it's going to impact and restrict those in your sphere. So ask the question, why do we do it? And then the second question, equally important, is there anything we can do about it? And some people say, oh no, you're just born this way. I was born this way. I've always been this way. I'm always going to be this way. Look, I don't buy into that. I mean, if you declare that about yourself, I've always been this way. I'm always going to be this way. I was born this way. I'm never going to change. I'm never going to be able to change. Actually, that's probably going to be true. But I want to put it to you that that doesn't have to be true. That change is possible. And it starts with this. Now, imagine, and maybe you are a manager or a business owner, or, you've got some sort of authority in a workplace environment, and you've got a staff member or a team member that you start to actually uncover that they are a serial liar. And because they're a serial liar, ergo, they can't be trusted. They start to breed toxicity in the workplace. Their colleagues can't trust them. You can't trust them. So eventually, the right thing to do, the professional thing to do, the mature thing to do is to fire the liar. Well, I want to encourage you to do that about you. Fire the liar. Fire the dishonest version of you, regardless of why you may have been in the habit of telling lies to yourself. And then hire the honest version of you. Even if initially the truth makes you feel bad about yourself. Because look, contrary to the culture we live in, there are worse things than feeling bad about yourself. In fact, a worse thing, which should be plainly obvious, is hanging on to what's bad about yourself. Is way, way worse than merely feeling bad about yourself. In fact, if you're willing to let go of what's bad about yourself by being honest and addressing it, you'll have less reason to feel bad about yourself. So just tell yourself the truth. It's just you and you. You talking to you. And this is a Jesus principle. Jesus famously said, and you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Now, he was applying that to a specific context when he made that statement, but actually it's a universal principle. It's a universal principle that the truth, knowing it and applying it and acting on it, will always, ultimately, not necessarily immediately, but ultimately set you free, because truth always leads to greater freedom. Lies lose their power in the light. Let me say that again. Lies lose their power in the light. So if you've been hiding out and telling yourself this narrative that's not actually true, then emerging from that and putting it out there, starting to tell yourself the truth, lies lose their power in the light. The truth always leads ultimately to greater freedom. Now, I want to show you an incredible promise that one of the early church leaders, a guy named Paul, made. So if you've got your smartphone camera, how about you scan this flow code? It's going to take you to a letter that Paul wrote, a letter called Philippians. It means that he wrote it to a church in a place called Philippi. And while you're doing that, let me just give you a little bit of context for that letter. Paul wrote it at a time when he was in Rome, where Christians were being persecuted. And he, as not just a Christian, but a Christian leader, had been imprisoned for spreading the good news about Jesus, which the Roman Emperor Nero saw as a threat to his power, the growing influence in number and power and influence of the church, the people of the way. So Paul had been locked up and he was awaiting trial. And back in those days, they didn't actually set a trial date. It's just like, we'll get to you when we get to you. Okay, buddy? So he's locked up and he starts to write this letter, which ultimately, in these bonkers circumstances, became and has become known as the letter of joy. Now, we actually taught a whole series on this called Chasing Happy. You can go back and watch that on this channel or catch it on our Elevate Church Perth podcast. It's going to be super encouraging, especially if you feel like I'm in prison or how can I experience joy? Well, Paul's got some clues, and so he wrote this letter, and let me drop you into chapter 4, verse 7, where Paul actually outlines an incredible promise that's available to every single one of us. The peace of God, which transcends, supersedes, goes beyond, makes sense even when it doesn't look like it should make sense, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts like a warrior guards something, and your minds in Christ Jesus, the peace of God. He makes the point that the peace of God is available to us, even when things are upside down, even when it shouldn't make sense, even when things shouldn't seem peaceful, even when the externals are anything but peaceful, that actually the peace of God is available to you because God knows what you're facing and He's not worried. Well, then goes on to tell us the pathway to how we can start to experience the peace of God. Here's what you do. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, think about such things. Whatever is true, only the true things. Slice and dice, sift and sort, separate the truth from the lies and focus on the truth. What's ever noble, which is not a word we use as much these days, but it's like whatever things, whatever thoughts are worthy of respect and dignified, think about those things. Whatever's right, well, this one's more self-explanatory. The right thing. What's the wise thing? What's the shining light thing? Whatever's pure, unmixed, undiluted, no shades of gray. This is literally the thing. Hasn't been tainted with lies or deception. Whatever's lovely. This is like, oh, that's a pleasing thought. When I think about that, all is well in my soul. Great. Think about such things. Whatever is admirable, respectable, commendable, higher altitude stuff. Align your thoughts with that list and expel anything that doesn't line up with that list. And Paul then goes on to write, and the God of peace will be with you. Now, I don't want you to miss this. Paul says, and the God of peace will be with you. And it's easy for us to say, well, yeah, of course. I mean, God's always with us. But really, that's not what Paul's referring to. He's referring to that not only can we experience God being with us, we can also experience the peace that God experiences in the midst of our journey and our circumstances. And he says that comes to us by focusing on what's true, including what's true about ourselves, even if it might initially be uncomfortable, embarrassing, shameful. Initially, when we do that, when we come out of hiding, when we put ourselves in the light, when we start to ask ourselves the difficult question and start to act on the truth rather than hide behind the excuses and the lies, then we start to move to becoming the person God's created us to be. So, buckle up. Let me jumpstart your journey from today with just some examples of some questions you might want to ask. Here's one. What are you avoiding? And why are you avoiding that person, that conversation, that good thing? Why are you putting that off? Seeing the health professional, or asking someone for forgiveness, or forgiving someone else. Why won't you get help? Seeing a counselor, or seeing a medical professional, or getting a mentor. Or what are you afraid of? What fears are you hiding behind? What insecurities are you hiding behind? And maybe this is the most relevant of all. Why doesn't Mark mind his own business? All right, fair enough. They're just some examples of plenty more that you could, and I encourage you to ask. Again, it might not be comfortable initially. You might find yourself feeling bad about yourself initially, but as I said earlier, there are worse things than feeling bad about yourself, and that is hanging on to what makes you a lesser version than what God's created you to be. And if you ask honest questions, if you ask truthful questions, you'll be glad you did. Maybe not initially, but eventually.